Hello and welcome to our first mini lecture. We are currently in the middle of week 3. You have finished exercise 1, creating a simple page, and now we're going to be reading chapter 5, HTML for structure, and marking up text. Now, I'm going to bounce around between a few screens here, so hopefully I don't get us lost. But let's first take a look at the chapter HTML for structure. Okay, so we have basically the reading assignment, and I've created a quick link that goes right to O'Reilly sign-in page. So it should make it easier to sign in for your book. And then once I'm done with this mini lecture, I'll create a link here which will go to a YouTube video. This link, this is an archive file which you can download with the materials that I'm using in the lecture. So these materials. And they are also available if you were to use FTP and log in to the class server. You will see that I have created a folder called Files to Download. And here's that zip file which I'm linking to. And then here's the actual HTML file folder with the, HTML for structure folder with the files inside. Okay? And the different resources. All right. So what I want to talk about here is in chapter 5. Now, I'm going to scroll through this page. I'm going to scroll through pretty quickly, which I know is annoying visually, but here's my point. If I scroll through this, okay, this is a very long chapter, all right? So, of course, there's a lot of good information. Yeah, we're not done. It's still going, okay? All right, so I'm going to scroll real fast back up to the top. So my point is, this is a very long chapter. There's a lot of information, a lot of technical information. The author goes into a lot of depth, which is good, okay? So in this, or in that archive file that I'm suggesting you download, I have inside O1 HTML for structure RTF. And what I tend to do usually in a classroom environment is I show them the really long chapter. I let them know that the chapter has lots of good information, and then we go through each of these points. And if I scroll through this, you'll see that this is a lot more on task, but it's simplified. So my point is, everything in the chapter is here in this text file. Okay, I've just really simplified everything. Okay, so like here's the block level elements, and I say it's head and subheads, they're the meaning of priority or importance, and then I list the elements. Okay, also inside this resource, you will see I have done screen captures. You could do this right from the text, but as an example, so I've done a screen capture of text level inline elements. So what I usually have people do is you could print these and then you can keep them in a notebook. You could paste them in, staple them in, glue them in. So maybe you have a notebook that these different resources, you print them, you paste them into your notebook, and we developers, we call this our toolkit or our toolbox. And this is where we put references, this is where we put charts, this is where we put code snippets that we know we're going to use over and over. And it's just very, very helpful resource. So we don't have to go look things up. We don't have to go searching for them. We just build this toolkit. Another one is when to escape characters, and then also invisible or ambiguous characters. And what's nice is, just like if we want a non-printing breaking space, we know that this is our entity name, or the characters that will enter into the HTML to get a certain character. The same would be the same here. If we wanted this ampersand, then we would use this entity name. So you wouldn't just type the ampersand on your keyboard. It would work, but it's really not the best thing to do. You would actually want to add this entity name into your code, and in return what you would see visually is this ampersand. And that is also true. I'm going to just move these out of the way. That is also true of these text level, I'm sorry, the text level inline. There's a lot of them here. It's a whole lot easier to print this, paste this into your book, and then consult back to this reference. All right, it gets better. So we just reduced the amount of reading from that whole chapter to maybe this outline. You read through this outline. You keep in mind that I'm really simplifying. But the idea is, if you need more information, then, let me move this out of the way, then you use your reference as a shortcut to find what you're looking for in this longer chapter, which will go into a lot more detail. Now, what I also suggest, if we take a look back here, and we'll have a visual example, but if we go back, up here, okay, like one of the concepts, a very important concept of this chapter is block versus, excuse me, inline elements. And then of course, it's using the block and the inline elements, once we understand the difference between the two, to apply meaning to our content. So the whole idea is we need the HTML elements to correctly parse content based on their relative importance. And we're doing this to help the machines. So we're trying to take our content, we're trying to use the right semantic block elements and the right or correct inline text elements to supply as much meaning as possible to the content on our page. Okay, so I'm going to bounce out of this outline, and now, and again, in the folder which you can download, I have these links, these text, these links that will open up the pages in a web browser. And the first, is HTML5 semantic elements. And what are the semantic elements? And what are the non-semantic elements? We're going to do a little demo on this real quickly too. And then you can scroll down and you get a nice little visual of the main semantic elements you use to add structure and meaning to your page. Okay? And then if you scroll down a little bit further, I believe they'll give you basically examples, definitions of each of those main elements. And then if we go down far enough, we'll get down to our non-semantic elements. I believe it's down here. Not in this one. Maybe it might be in the next one. Sorry. Okay, so this is all the semantic stuff. Sorry about that. All right, then this next link, which is available, will speak specifically to block and inline elements. And what I like about this is if we scroll down, there it is. Perfect. Here is a nice little visual list of all of your block level HTML elements. Okay? Then your inline elements with a nice little example, and then there they are all listed. Okay? Now, the non-semantic, this is the one I was looking for here. The div element is a non-semantic. It's a block level element, but it has no meaning. It's generic. It's common. Okay? And then the span element, this is not a block level, but an inline level element. But it is also generic. It has no meaning. It has a use, but it has no semantic meaning. The same is true with the div. It has a use as far as placing content, but it does not have a semantic meaning that transfers any information that's really relevant to that chunk of information. Okay, so you can access the entire chapter, and I encourage you to use this resource. Lots of good information. Okay, or in doing your next exercise, you could use the outline available in the archive, which you can download, which really simplifies the chapter, but for the most part, everything, all of the elements are there. Okay, and then of course you can use W3 Schools as far as learning about the semantic elements. And again, I encourage you to print some of the parts of these pages. As example, it would be really nice just to do a screen capture of this area, paste that into your toolkit. To create a screen capture of this area, paste it into your toolkit. Excellent resources. I have students do this all the time. It's very helpful. That way everything's in one place, and I'll show you an example of that also. Okay? All right, so before I show you that example and we talk about the relevance or the importance of a sketchbook. Now, a sketchbook is not required for the class, but as a front-end developer, I use sketchbooks all the time, and I use those to document my entire work flow and process. But anyway, before we do that, I'm just going to open an editor here, okay? And in the body of the element, let's go ahead and use a semantic element, an element, HTML5 element, which has meaning. And let's just do header, okay? So the header has meaning. That is usually the banner area, the initial part of a page which displays. And often in this banner, let's go ahead and close this header here. So in this, what is a banner, we often have an image, some sort of gratuitous graphic that introduces us to the content, to the site. There is often a headline. There might be a short introduction, and then we often have a call to action, something that's going to engage the user, that makes them want to click on something, that makes them want to order something, that makes them want to fill out a form. We're trying to convert them. We're trying to get them to do something. We call this the hero box. It is very common. The header with the gratuitous graphic, with the headline, the short intro, and some call to action. In industry, it's often referred to as the hero box. All right, so in the header, I'm just going to type header. And then I'll click over here. Now I'm using Dreamweaver. We'll talk about different editors later on. Exercise 2 is going to use CodePen, okay? But we'll get to using other editors also, or at least introduce you to them. All right, so my point here is we created a semantic element, a header, and then I placed the word header inside. What you're going to see in this design view here is our word header, but you're going to see this blue line that's going all the way around it from side to side. This is an inline block element, okay? So it's a block level element. It takes up the entire viewport, the entire browser from one side to the other, not counting this default margin, okay? And then of course, there might be some space above, there might be some space below, but this idea is the next block element you create would go below, and the next block element would go below that, and so on and so forth. That's called the normal flow of the document, where the content, block level elements, start at the top, and as they're created over here in order, okay, from top to bottom, they show up in the page top to bottom. All right, let's go ahead, and now what we'll do is let's just place a div element, and a div element is generic. All right, it has no meaning. We can place content in a div, but it has no real meaning. And basically it's a division of space, all right? Everyone just says div. All right, so this is generic, div. It holds content, but it has no meaning, which is parsed and transfers to the machines. Header is a semantically correct HTML5 element, which indeed does have meaning, and when parsed will convey what it is to the browser, to the machines. Okay? All right. If we click over here, you're going to see that in fact our div, which is generic, is a block level element. Okay? Goes side to side. Its height is based on whatever is inside. But as you can see, these block level elements stack up. All right, let's go down below our div and let's use an inline element. And this will be an inline text-based element. So let's use strong, which is the modern version of bold. So bold actually, it has presentation. It makes text bold. In this case, strong adds a level of importance, but it's not presenting the information. Okay, so it's not saying bold as far as presentation. It's saying strong as far as importance. So it's a subtle difference. Okay, so we have our strong element, and then I'm going to go ahead and type, let's just type, I guess I could do bold, but we'll do strong. Why not? Okay, I'm thinking about this too much. All right, so you're going to see the word strong, and it's displaying as if it's bold, but the idea is it's a level of, it's important. Okay, so this is an inline element. All right, you'll notice when I select strong over here, we do not get a block going all the way around it from side to side. It's inline. Now, to take that one step further, if I go over to the G over here, and let's add a span, like so. And then we'll go to the other side of the G, and we will close our span. So far we're working with all closed elements. In this example, there are no empty or open elements like an image tag or a BR or an HR. Okay. Now we have placed a generic span, and a generic span basically is an inline element, and it's going to span only the character or characters or content which we are enclosing inside of it. Now, to really see what's going on, let's go up into the head of our document, and we're going to create a style element, and the type of style equals, this is one of the nice things about using an editor like Dreamweaver, is it gives you these code snippets. Again, we'll get into this later. So let's go ahead and close our style, and what we're going to do is let's go ahead and create a style for header like so, and we're just going to place a border so you can see what's going on here. So border colon, let's just go 1 pixel solid, and let's make this, you will use a hexadecimal for our RGB color. We'll use all zeros, which should give us black, and then we will save. Okay, and now we should see a 1 pixel. If we really want to make this obvious, maybe we'll bump this up to 2 pixels. Okay, so now we're seeing this border, so we can really prove to ourselves that this is a block level element. Let's go ahead and also make the div a block level element. So I'll just do a header, comma, div, and we'll save. And you'll see that we have that border going around our generic division of space. Let's go ahead and add strong to this list. Okay, so instead of targeting elements, what we're doing is we're creating a list. We're saying header, comma, and div, comma, and strong, save, and you'll see that this border is going around the word strong, because strong, the element, is an inline element. It's not going to go all the way across the screen. Now, the span is also an inline element. So if we include span on our list here, like so, and save, do you see how we have a border around the G? Okay. Oh, for a moment there I thought I spelled strong correctly, but I forgot. I put the span on it, so the G's over there. Okay, my bad. All right, so block level elements, inline level elements, semantic elements, which have meaning, and non-semantic elements, which are generic and have no meaning. All right, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to move this program out of the way, and then again just point out that the video, which I'm finishing up now, on the chapter. So if you go to your week 3 module and you take a look at 3.4 HTML for structure, marking up text, chapter 5, and scroll down to the bottom, this will be a link which will go to this mini lecture on YouTube, and then this link will download the archive zip file, which has the shortened, abbreviated outline for the structure, and then has several images that are screen captures from the actual chapter, which you might like to, again, print and paste into a resource, a sketchbook, however you like. It could be a binder, whatever you like, as far as organizing and creating a toolkit. And again, that toolkit is a resource that just allows you to get at the common elements, the common code you use the most, so you don't have to go searching for it. Okay? And the better you organize that toolkit, the easier it will be to work on projects. I also have these quick links to HTML block and inline elements, HTML5 semantic elements, and then when we get into exercise 3, we'll be talking more about the CSS box model and the CSS margin. The second exercise is all about, so if we go back to our course here, our second exercise, exercise 2, is I am in HTML. Okay, and I'll go ahead and place these links here for the mini lecture and the resources. I'll also include them on the I am in HTML. But this is your next project. And I'll do, matter of fact, the video should already be available on this. But I'm just going to make sure that I have clearly gone over the requirements. I believe they're in the playlist, which is available down here. Okay, so I have part 1 through part 12, which sets up the basic project. Okay, takes you through it step by step. And then, nope, that's the third project that has the freestyle approach to it. Okay, so I believe we have gone through everything. The only part left, and if I can recall where I have placed this, all right, I may have accidentally closed it here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here is a student's sketchbook, and I have students create a sketchbook that basically documents their entire process for each exercise, for each assignment. They have their research, the fonts they're going to use, the images they're going to use, the content they're going to use, kind of the conceptual direction they're going to use, all that research. And then we also start to collect resources which are going to be used in the project, and your class notes and your sketches and your development notes, your development, wire frames, your comps, your code, your conceptual process. And then it's even a really good idea that when you're done, you print your finished work and you paste that or you somehow attach it. I really encourage students to use these or to create one of these sketchbooks slash toolkits for each of their projects or for a class overall. I find employers are really interested in this process, and it shows more of what you are capable of doing. It shows your organization a whole lot more than if you just show them a web page or send them a URL and say, I did this. Okay, a document like this is living. It's alive. You can add to it. You can talk about it. You can have a discussion with a potential employer. I found that they're very useful. Okay, with that being said, so this is one of the students' books, and everybody has a different process on how they draw, how they doodle, whatever. Okay, and again, you can treat these like a scrapbook. You can just find all these resources, tear them out, print them, paste them in, stick them in, staple them in, whatever. Sometimes people use post-it notes and put notes to themselves. They do really kind of fun things. All right, so this one just happened to be for exercise 1, I am in HTML, and also exercise 2, I am in CSS. And we just get a sense that, okay, so here's the text that they wrote. And then it was exercise 1. Then they start listing some notes to themselves on what it is they want to do, what they're trying to capture, what they're trying to communicate. And then if we go down a little bit further, we're not to exercise 2 yet, but then they start to draw out how they're going to take that structured element, which was their bio, basically, their introduction, how they're going to take that structured element and start adding presentation to it. And that's what exercise 3 is when we start really exploring CSS and presentation. All right, so if I scroll down a little bit further, then we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of their layout as far as just making sketches. Now, and then this is their final, once they were done with exercise 3, when they had taken just that structure, just that outline, something that just looked like a research paper, and turned that code, turned that content into something that is visually interesting. Okay, so this is exercise 3. Exercise 2 is this. Okay, when I say this, just content that has semantic meaning applied to it. This is what the machines get all excited about. This is what helps the machines, taking your content and applying these elements so the elements have meaning and structure, which they can communicate to the machines to help the end user. And then we add the presentation. That's the third level. It's the structure, the meaning, and then the presentation. And the presentation is when we start getting a nice visual layout. Now, I'm just going to run through. So we're pretty much done with our first little mini lecture. And I hope I stayed on task and didn't ramble or anything like that. And I know this is longer than the typical 5 minutes. I just felt it better to have this be one video instead of several smaller ones. But I'm just going to end this now, and as I end this, I'm just going to scroll through kind of slow here, and if you want, you can take a look at what is a typical sketchbook of one of our design students that is doing basically the 125 class. So I'm just going to roll through this. If there's something that stands out here, I might say something. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of let it happen. right, so we're ending this up. There's the final interface of one of their projects. So again, I hope this was helpful or useful. Again, the idea of the sketchbook is to create a toolkit, of all these references, to create a living document, to create a story of your development process, your research, your ideas, your concepts, your notes, your development process of creating the different parts of your project, and then your final project, so we can see what's at the end of all those steps you went through. All right, so I hope that was helpful, and good luck with exercise 2.